What's happening? How are the people? Shmode, what's going on? Hey, you made it. You actually made it to a stream. About time. Dingleberry McGee. 3 sub times 3. Welcome back, Mr. Dingle McGee. Dingle, that sucks about your PC situation, guy. Nice stickers. Thanks. Marika? Hey, I know you. Welcome to the stream, Meatball. My little kiddo. How are you? Nice stickers, Shmo. Did I send you stickers? Did I send you some? I think you were one of the peeps that received stickers. Oh, that's right. You were. I had a feeling. I don't even think Marika, Marika is my daughter, by the way, for those of you who are tuned in already. Marika, 15, is my oldest. Welcome back, Shmode. So glad you made it. Mod numero uno. I'm going to apologize now. They're full of duty. I just got your text, Dingle. If you hear some noise in the background that sound like gunshots and other things, World War III hasn't started at Rise Above. We're doing construction downstairs, and they're using a tool that actually uses bullets to drive nails into the wall. So, because our facility is all concrete. So, yeah, hope everyone's weekend was good. Marika, we got to find a time for you to get your butt in here and be a part of this amazing opportunity here at Rise Above. And all the people said amen. So today we're going to talk about a kind of a, I don't know, it's not a weird topic. It's a topic that I think is one that we don't give time and effort into, where we don't necessarily give it a voice. And I truly believe that it's something that we're missing the boat on when we talk about why things happen or why things don't happen, for that matter. And so we're going to walk through this idea of resiliency a little bit. And the idea, Marika Dingle Marika. The idea here is we're going to talk through a bunch of different things that culminate in resiliency, typically. Now, this is a best case scenario type thing, but we're going to talk about all the elements that I believe, and I think socially and academically people believe are the elements that result in people having resiliency to some degree. And I hope that at some point we get to have a couple of guests in here that have this conversation with us. I think today is just going to be me. We had, and I'm sorry for the late start to the stream today. We had a staff meeting today, and it went till noon. So as soon as I was out and had the chance, hey, Ellie, what's up? Be nice, Ellie. My daughter's here. And so we're going to have a conversation just around this idea as a group. So I'm looking for some participation from you guys, particularly about life experience, things that you've done, and things that you haven't done that have made you resilient. So I think one of the things that we need to figure out is what the heck is resiliency? When I ask you, are you resilient? What does that mean to you? What does it mean when I say that I'm a resilient? But you are. You are indeed. What is it when I say to you that I'm resilient or you're resilient? Even Ellie is resilient. Right? Because there is an element to this that makes me always go back to the military. Because if there's one place in this world that if you are not resilient, you will not last. And that is any branch of the military or anything therein like it. And no, I didn't skip leg day, and I can barely walk up the stairs here. And I did legs on Friday. That says everything. So how do you define resiliency? Resiliency to me really is the ability to bounce back. Right? When I think of being resilient, when I was in the military, being able to go through a very difficult or trying element of my training, element of the exercise, and then not catastrophically failing at the end, i.e. giving up. Having the ability to recover quickly, to recover at all, really. Because there's varying degrees of resiliency. Would you agree? Resiliency isn't the static thing that everybody either has or does not have. I think we all have a varying degree of resiliency. And I think it has a lot to do on our life experience. That generally those who are more resilient than others have found better, more practical ways to overcome difficult situations.
Okay.
Welcome back, Self.
Everything's great. Everything is awesome.
That's a great quote. Sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. One of them might be that Risk Immerse streams on time. Impossible things. And I'm sorry for you believing the lie. But resiliency really is, I'm glad you're here, buddy, by the way, and thank you for continuing to be part of the gym. I know that some days it feels like a place you don't want to be, but nevertheless, it is an important thing to do. First part of the gym is show up, and you showed up, brother. Appreciate you. Because difficult things can pile up, and the reality is, what is what from, Marika? Oh, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. That's a quote from a movie, is it not, Self? If I'm not mistaken, I thought it was a military-esque type movie. Ellie? Agreed. Because, the reality is, all of my streams are in the context of Rise Above, right? In the context of the difficulties our students face. But when it comes to the chat, in having these conversations, I really am pushing back to you guys to say, what are the things that you have had to be resilient to get through? In the reality is, very often there's instances where you're probably saying, I wasn't resilient. There's things that you probably did where you may have fallen or quit. Where you didn't persevere, as it were, through the situation, whatever that situation may have been, because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's harder than the last time, even though it's the same thing. The reality is, I'm not because resiliency is elastic. It changes. It grows and it ebbs and it flows and does all kinds of things. The reality is you may face the same challenge today, but today you cry and you break down and you give up, and last time you didn't, or next time you don't. So my question to you today are, what are the things that help us to be resilient today? When we weren't resilient yesterday. What things can we do because there's a reality. Some of you got kids. Some of you have failing health. Or parents who have failing health. Before coming in here, we have a group that meets here every Wednesday. It was on Mondays. Now I think it's Wednesdays. And they pray for Rise Above and honestly our community as a whole. Before coming in, Veronica told me that one of the attendees' mothers had just passed away today. How does that not devastate her to a point where she's completely incapacitated? There's got to be some resiliency in her to get back up and to start her day tomorrow. Because, yeah, I mean, it is. It's a sad thing. It's a fact of life. It's a reality we all face. You know, Veronica and I both in the past, and Marika, you as well, in the past 5 years have faced an immense amount of tragedy in our families personally. Right? We've lost 5 very important people, 6 very important people in our lives in the past 3.5 years. So yeah, there is an element of the people around us, 100%. So that's a great point, Marika, because what the people around us do is they maximize our resiliency. So very often, so I'll use the analogy of a bucket, right? You have your bucket, and your bucket, thanks, buddy. Your bucket only has, it's only half full, because that's how much resiliency I have, is I have a half full bucket of resiliency. And so if Marika's here with me, and Marika always also has a half full bucket of resiliency, but the tragedy strikes me, and I don't have the needed capacity, enough resiliency in my bucket, because I only have this much, but I need this much to get through today. What Marika can do, if she herself is not going through this same tragedy and has the same depth of things going on, she can take from her bucket and pour into mine and get me to a point where I can make it. And that really is the epitome of what we do at Rise Above, is we help to top off students' buckets of their ability to cope, their ability to make it through, to get through whatever challenge it is that they're facing. And so to Marika's point, that's the importance of having at least one good person one healthy person in your life, one person that can assist you with the support system that she spoke of, right? And that is the reality of a funeral very often, is that all of these people come and they support you. They aid in your bouncing back, right? Individually, you may not do well to get through an event like that, but collectively, you tend to get through. And that's why, when you think of a military experience, in that term, band of brothers means something. It's not just a phrase that is used to define a group of guys that go into battle together. It is literally a group of guys who are banded together because individually they would collapse. They don't just support each other militarily, i.e. my bullets support your bullets, my grenades land beside your grenades to kill the bad guy. Really, if you've ever seen the movie, they even demonstrate it in the movie, there's a reality to them supporting each other emotionally. Right? So let's get into it a little bit. So resiliency, one of the things that builds resiliency. What are the things that build resiliency? Sorry, so the glass is half full if you have half filled it and the half empty if you drank it. Yeah. So end the debate. But there's also a reality. So you can have a cup that's overflowing as well, and a cup that's completely empty. Right? So I can throw a loop into that, and we can, I'll come back to that, because very often we talk about the whole cup overflowing thing as a negative when it can also be a positive. So let's start with all of these are going to be C words as well. So competency is where we're going to start. This word competency. So competency, if by cup you mean wallet, competency describes the feeling of knowing that you can handle a situation. So I know what I'm doing, right? I got a flat tire. I'm competent. I know how to change a flat tire, so it's not going to stress me out, right? So again, practically think about this idea of competency. You're driving on the highway, you get a flat tire, cars are flying by you at 80 miles an hour, you get a flat tire. That's going to stress you out, even to a mechanic. But if you are a mechanic, it's going to stress you out less. Because the reality is, I feel comfortable changing the tire. You may not feel comfortable with the cars whizzing by you at 100 miles an hour, but you feel comfortable with the task at hand, even if your children are in the car. Now, take that the other way. when you have a situation where, you have a flat tire and you're on the highway and you don't know how to change the tire. Suddenly your resiliency, your stress level is going to peak a lot higher than somebody who does. So this is where competency comes in. And when it comes to children in 80 miles an hour, that's, well, you got the Autobahn, you just give her. And when you enter the realm of children, and particularly, or even if you change the phraseology of that and say maturity, because sometimes a 13-year-old can be more mature than a 20-year-old. Drink away this child to Aurora. Aurora is their cat, by the way. Meow. If you got cat emotes, spam those cat emotes. If you got them, I got a couple good ones. Those are my favorite ones right there. The reality is, the more you know about a given subject, the less stressed you are. Think of an exam. Think of a test or quiz that you're taking in school. The more confident you are in the subject, the more likely you are to not stress about it. This is the number one thing that those people who say they hate public speaking, this is the number one reason why they hate public speaking. What's up, Seaweed? What's going on, buddy? What's that, Seaweed? You live in Michigan? Is that what you're saying with the roads taking out your car? Our roads suck. You hear me, Mrs., I should say, Michigan governor? What's up, MLA? Glad you're here, buddy. So, I mean, the idea there is that if you get in front of a crowd and you don't know what you're talking about to 500 people, the biggest fear you have is that you're going to get found out, that I'm up at the front of the room and I'm the one talking and I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. B, they're going to ask you a question and you're going to be like, well, this time no, can I get back to you? You know, the reality is they're going to ask you something that's going to be so specific that you're going to be like, I just don't have a clue. Public speaking doesn't bother me at all. 2 reasons why. 1, I generally don't agree to public speak on something unless I know what I'm talking about. 2, if I don't know the answer to something, I don't talk about it. I can't be wrong. If I don't know, I don't know, and I admit I don't know. End of problem. Public speaking is not fearful. So competency really is the first step in building resiliency in kids. In really what happens is when it comes to children anyways, we shelter kids to a point where we don't expose them to enough to make them resilient. I'll use firearms, guns as a prime example of this. We're so afraid of guns. We're so afraid of firearms culturally that we get to a point where we never expose our kids to it, so they don't have any competency when some kid, when they go to visit someone's house, pulls out a gun and says, hey, you want to see my dad's gun? If you ask any of my 3 kids, if they go to someone's house and they say, hey, you want to see my dad's guns? My kids are going to go, meh, I've seen my dad's guns. I don't need to see your dad's guns. And so there's just not going to be an issue. My kids aren't going to be disinterested. That's part of the competency. My kids are educated in the do's and don'ts. And so I don't fear that my kids are going to be inappropriate with firearms. Which leads me to my next topic, confidence. The reality is, the more competency you have, the more confident you are going to be in a given situation. Our belief in our own ability is derived directly, may I say again, from our competency level. We build confidence by building competence. You following me? We build confidence by building competence. The more you know about a given subject, the more confident you will be in addressing it, speaking about it. And I openly come to these conversations saying, I don't have all of the confidence. I am not the brain in the room. But I'm confident, as I talked about my public speaking, I'm confident enough, and I'm competent enough to at least start the conversation. And this is where I come to you guys and say, okay, I'm here for you, right? So let's have an open debate. Let's have an open dialogue about this topic, whatever that topic might be. I feel like confidence does not follow competence for me. I can be competent at something and still expect myself to fail. So, but there's let me ask you that, why do you feel that way? And that's a scary line, Seaweed. You're just going to have to trust me on this one. You should be able to demonstrate why I should trust you. It could be because you have this PhD and it's on your wall and you point to that and you go, well, that's why. I've spent 10 years studying the subject. And so there's a level of demonstrated competence in a given topic. Or if we're talking about business, why should I trust you in helping me start this business? Well, here's living proof. I work at Rise Above. I started this from nothing and blah, blah, blah. I have demonstrated proofs that I can do X, Y, Z. Or, hey, I got a flat tire, and I'm going to allow you to change my flat tire because I know that you have done motor swaps in vehicles before or something to that effect, and therefore you should have a demonstrated ability to change a tire. But Shimode, the thing that stuck out with me when you said that, and this is what I was going to say before I realized, Neil, shut your mouth and let Shimode tell you why. When you said you feel like confidence does not precede competence, a lot of that can be your personality type, and it could also be from a past experience where you were in a public speaking situation, and even though you were competent in a given subject, somebody in your audience belittled you or made you feel like, even though you were right, that you were wrong, and therefore an embarrassing situation now pushes you from the podium. That is very common. And why a lot of people don't, not just public speaking, by why people don't pick up skateboarding. You could be an amazing skateboarder, but one day somebody made fun of you because your skateboard looked stupid. It didn't have the right color wheels, or your shoes they weren't real skateboard shoes or something. And so now you don't skateboard because there's something to that. Right? CB, you are just catching up on chat a little bit. Paradoxically, the Alps have the most expensive tolls. Oh, car chains. Oh my gosh, car chains are the worst. They tear up roads like crazy. Depending on what that is, there is some risk and some reward for it. Are you talking to me, Seaweed, about that, or are you talking about chains on the road still? Because so confidence, so let's talk about that risk-reward thing, because that's kind of an interesting concept when we talk about self-confidence. There is, and again, some personalities are more risk-averse than others. Thanks for clarifying, Seaweed. The whole risk-reward thing is dependent on your personality. There are some personalities that are very risk-averse. They don't do anything that's risky. If it isn't spelled out in detail, I'm not going to invest this way. I'm not going to do these risky. I'm not going to jump out of planes, even though you double-check my parachute. I've got to do X, Y, Z. They're just risks I won't take. Whereas someone like me, I'm willing to put my money in the game if I think there's a good chance that I will succeed. If there was an element of control that I can maintain, the only time I typically won't do an activity is if I have zero control over it. If I feel as though I can't influence the outcome and I'm completely dependent on somebody else or something else, I won't have the confidence, even though I have the competence myself to do it, I won't step into it if I don't have the confidence that you have the competence to do it. Does that make sense? So there's a risk-reward thing that people will take to different measure, and it really is dependent, I believe, on your personality type. Some personalities are like, well, yeah, sure, why not? Take all your clothes off, jump in, Others are like, I don't care how much bubble wrap you put on me, I ain't going. A lot of people don't like to fly because they have no control. And that's me. So that seaweed, that is me in roller coasters. I like roller coasters, but I don't like roller coasters because I'm dependent on somebody who is unseen, somebody I have no understanding of their qualifications, the quality of their tools, the measure of their management to say, do a good job. Whatever it is, I have no measure to say that I'm confident that that person is competent to do the work that is putting my life in danger or not. Correct statement. So confidence, this idea of focusing on the best in each element, right? Qualities and fairness, integrity, persistence, all the stuff, because it's a social thing. I am your roller coaster buddy. We have some good photos to prove it. Roller coasters scare you, MLA? They scare a lot of people. That's why they like them. The more scary they are, the more they like to get on them. But again, that's a very specific personality. There are people that would never go anywhere near a roller coaster. And then there's the in-between. Then there's the ones that say, I don't care if my life is going to end this afternoon. I'm getting on that roller coaster. Right? So we go from competence to confidence to this idea of connection. Because we touched on it, Marika, you touched on it actually already. Jimo, do you love roller coasters? Do you like the loop-de-loop ones? I mean, for me, the best roller coaster to me is the one where my feet dangle. I love when my feet dangle. Come over your shoulders and you're just locked in and your feet kind of hang there. I love the feeling of my feet whipping around and doing all that kind of stuff. As long as they don't spin because I'll be... Spinny things don't do well for me too. I'm sorry if you can hear the jackhammer in the background, by the way. They're cleaning up some of the corners and stuff from the work they were doing a couple weeks ago. Okay, so competence with help, with confidence, but confidence needs even more. Yeah. That's the thing. Competence breeds confidence. But know this. So you can have competence, and you can have confidence. The major thing that most people look for when they consider resiliency, again, in children, primarily is what I'm talking about, but in general, resiliency most often comes from our level of connection to others. And I'll qualify this. Healthy connections. I can be connected to 1 billion people. Social media, prime example. But I can still be the most fragile person on the planet. Because every one of those connections is paper thin. It's like this thick. The level of in depth of relationship is paper thin. One little thing happens relationally, and I see it all the time. Trust me, people message me. Is somebody says something on stream, somebody posts something on Facebook. You stalk somebody on Facebook or on one of those other social apps. I'm old, so I still trigger to Facebook. And suddenly you go through someone's instant messages or whatever the case is, and they post something that you don't agree with, and so suddenly it's an unfollow. Why? Because your relationship, your connection to them is paper thin. It's that thick. Instabad. The reality is, if you have a depth of relationship with somebody, you can have a relationship with them even if you have polar opposite political views. Because the reality is that doesn't define our relationship. There is a depth there. I have enough understanding of who you are. You've already proven to me that you're a good person. And there are people in my own chat who I have had disagreements with in other people's chats. Theologically, politically, socially, whatever it is. gameplay. And it doesn't faze me. Why? Because I'm a very confident person. I have a degree of competency that I'm okay with. That unless I have a depth of relationship with you, and I have to some degree I have a depth of relationship with you guys, but honestly, unless I meet you or know you face to face or have the degree of relationship, like my daughter's here, like a depth of relationship with her, I just don't think that people understand. I'm going to use a term. People get so butthurt in chat about the simplest things, and then they suddenly unfollow a channel or they don't talk to somebody anymore or whatever the case is. And I'm guilty. There's literally one person in all of chat that I refuse to engage with, and I realize it, and I've actually tried to do things to correct it because I realize it's ridiculous. There's no depth of relationship. Why do I care so much? And I agree with you, Marika. That's why social media can be very bad. And the vast majority of the students that come to Rise Above are here because of social media-related incidences. Times 10. Where they've misused Facebook or social media. Or, sorry, Solf, it's the way it is, buddy. You said that one thing that one time. I'm out. It's because you're French. It's because I'm French, isn't it? Oh. No, it's not because you're French, Solf. Although that is part of it. Not going to lie. My mother-in-law? No. My mom has, her background is French, actually. I'm not going to lie. I'm Canadian. I cannot hate French. Well, I guess I could hate French people, but I don't. I speak French. Bonjour, Solf. Comment ça va? Ça va bien. Merci beaucoup. Let's see. So we have competency, confidence, connection. And by the way, Solf, if that little bit there doesn't give me brownie points over seaweed, come on, guy. I got an extra check mark in a box somewhere because of that whole asking you how things are. But connection, it really then goes to character because when we start talking about relationships, Solf is your mod. Well, unmod him. What are you going to do? I'm joking. Don't unmod Solf. He's decent. So when you start talking about connecting to people and having relationships with folks and kind of going through this cycle of, hey, I know you, you know me, let's have conversations. Hey, I can disagree with you and still like you and blah, blah, blah. And, hey, I'm having this bad day. Hey, come and, go back to one of my other streams where we talked about sitting Shiva and I can sit and be quiet with you and love you and see you through this traumatic moment. Then we need to start having the conversation of character. The problem is he bans everyone. How proper that we're now talking about character. And for the last time, we don't on. None of you can quote a French sentence where we actually say on. What did I say something that said on? I didn't say anything that said on. I never said anything that's on. Did I say that? Seaweed, why are you lying? Because really, we can have a ton of connections, even intimate connections. Right? Because a connection is creating a common area where you can share things and be in communion together outside of like TV time, because that's not, or going to a movie, because that's not really connecting. I'm talking where you actually have to talk to each other. But the reality is what I'm talking about is fostering healthy relationships. Where you're going to develop, and this is character now. Solf, listen to me. Just joking. Where you're going to develop a solid set of morals and a value system. I'll get there, Seaweed. That's a great statement, by the way. But I was already listening. We're not in class. That so reminds me of like 8th grade. Why am I getting in trouble? He's not, I'm listening. He's not listening. Character really is where you develop or you demonstrate your morals and values. Your right and wrong. Best way I can say it. And how do you develop character? I guess it's a tough question, right? Because, and I agree with you, Stevie, your character really is what will demonstrate your reputation, because your reputation is derived from what you do in private. It's a demonstration of what you say. Reputation is a demonstration of what you say. So if I say to somebody, hey, thank you for that $150,000. I'm going to go build this amazing space at Rise Above, hence the noise in the background. But instead of doing that, I go buy a new van and go buy a bunch of, I don't know what I'd buy. Yeah, some of the people on the stream, I'd go buy more computers or something. But the reality is, if I don't do with the money what I say I'm going to do, people's perception of my character is going to change. And really what has happened is I've demonstrated my true character, my true value and moral system in what I see as right and wrong. Because really what I've said is I don't value follow through. But the reality is I'm doing with the money what I said I was going to do. And it's going to result in an amazing program. And that person that gave me that $150,000 is going to say, wow, look at that amazing space that you built for these kids. What else do you need? If you can do that with 150 grand, whoo, boy. They start rubbing their hands together and say, how can we work with you more? And honestly, in 5 years, that's how Rise Above has done so well, is we've become experts at follow through. We have consistently developed relationships with people where we have demonstrated our character. So your word actually does mean something. Seaweed? Yes. Your words mean everything. Don't make me move your seat to the front. I was that kid. Literally, Seaweed, I was that kid all through grade school. A good reputation is everything. And the reality is your reputation does precede you. It doesn't matter how big the city is. And I'll give you 2 examples. First, locally here. You don't realize how connected everybody is. So initially, I was an outsider. From Canada, moving to this community, Marika, my daughter, who's here in the stream, moved with us from Canada to here. And Marika, chime in any way you want to. The reality is when we came here, we knew nobody. So all of this stuff I'm talking about today, I had to develop with people brand new. And what it came down to was the more people I met, the more people I realized I was already connected to. I'll explain. So I get a donation from somebody, for example. And what I always say when I get donations, I say to people, I really appreciate you donating $100 or $50 or $100,000 to Rise Above. But really what I'd love for you to do is introduce me to somebody else. And they go, oh yeah, that's great. I'd love your program. I'd really love to introduce you to my Uncle Jim. My Uncle Jim, he's a great guy. Sorry, I hit my mic. Uncle Jim's a great guy. I think he'd really get into your program. I'm like, Jim, wait a second. Jim Smith? Oh, you know Jim? Oh yeah, I've known. He's my uncle. Yeah, he's owns such a business. I'm like, yeah, I already know Jim. Yeah, Jim's a great guy. And I found that happening over and over and over and over again to where I realized, holy crap, everyone in this community is related. There's 100,000 people in this community. And what I realized was with my core group of people that I already knew everybody in the community. I just hadn't been formally introduced yet. What took 10 freaking years, Marika? No, it's definitely not an overnight thing. Nobody wants to eat a dusty apple. First thing I do is I rub that apple. I buffer out. My actions speak louder than your words. That's funny. So character really is a demonstration to the community. And when I say community, I use that collectively. It could mean your immediate family. It could mean the person in the grocery store that's checking out your groceries. That's your community. You know, and Uncle Jim, yeah, Uncle Jim the Tank. He's a sub here. I'll look at that clip when we're done. Actually, let's look at that clip right now, shall we? It's because you're French. It's because I'm French, isn't it? It's because you're French. Oh, you can hear the jackhammer in the background, but that's funny. That's a keeper. It's because you're French. The reality is that the more... thanks for clipping that, so. The more you focus on demonstrating your character to people, the easier it is to do stuff, right? So I'll get back to the second half of my conversation about character. When I worked in Toronto, let's just say I burned a lot of bridges, work-wise. I've never been a shy person about telling people what I thought about their work ethic or a company that I thought was mismanaged. And Toronto's a big city. It's 4 million people. That's a lot of people. I don't know if you know how big 4 million people is, but it's big. And Toronto is a vast city. It covers a lot of ground. And I company hopped a lot for about 10 years. Again, Marika can attest. The reality is, one day, a headhunter, a professional talent acquisition artist, called me and said, "Hey, I heard about you from somebody. You have a certain skill set I'd love to market to other companies. Would you let me shop you around, in other words, to companies?" And she almost immediately, I said yes, because, I mean, who doesn't want somebody to go brag about them to other people? And so that day I got pimped out, basically. And she went on to company and said, "Hey, I got this guy." And quickly what I realized after about 2 weeks, she called me one day and she goes, "Wow, you're a really popular fella." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I've called probably 3 or 4 dozen companies and everybody knows you." Yeah, and seaweed, that is just the city. Everything around the GTA is crazy. And you're right, it is almost half of the population of Canada. It's solidly a good 3/10. That's for sure. And she called me and she's like, "Neil, you realize everybody knows you?" And I was like, "Yes, that's awesome." And she goes, "No, that's not good." What had preceded me was not my work ethic, was not my ability to do what everybody else could not do. It was my explosiveness. It was my willingness to be honest with people at a moment's notice, is the best way I can say it. And so I had a reputation. And my character had gone before me. So I then had to work at redefining my character. Because I was a good worker. I didn't miss work. I gave you my best. I just didn't like to be in companies that weren't effective. It's the best way I could say it, though. Feedback is good when it's done appropriately. And I talked about in the training for my staff today, I taught about this idea of gratitude. Maybe if time is available, if we're able to do it today, I'll talk about it a little bit on stream. I'll go grab my notes and we'll talk a little bit about gratitude today, because it's an essential part of this conversation. I think maybe I will do it next week. We'll have the gratitude chat next week. Yeah, and that was the great thing, Seaweed, is that once she told me that, it was a shoulder check to me. It was like, holy crap, I did not, because you think Toronto was such a big city. I'm like, I can just hide in a corner and no one will see me. I'll just go to the next company of 1,000 employees and I'm going to disappear in the crowd, right? Well, the reality is everybody else is doing the same thing I'm doing, which is company hopping to get better pay, because that's what you do. You start off in one company, you get a pay raise, and you go to the next company to get a pay raise, and so on and so forth. And what happened is HR managers do that a lot in Toronto, because there's so many new companies and everyone's stealing from everybody, employee base. And so the HR managers were the ones that were talking about me. So you've really got to avoid character flaws, public character flaws, in a way that will define you as a person. Because if you can do those things, they really help you in the connection phase. Because very often people will, when their character is flawed, i.e. you haven't established a good set of morals and values that determine right from wrong, your connections start to fail, right? You start to get to a place where you start to hang around with and associate with people who have the same morals and values that you do. And if you have a moral and value system that allows you to be corrupt in some way, you're going to hang around with other corrupt morally people. Unless it's your profession to hang around with morally corrupt people. Because your job is to help correct and move them along, or whatever the case is. Feedback isn't always good because it can hurt if you don't have the mindset. And I would say that to add to that feedback can be bad when it isn't done properly. So it's a both and. Oh, it's seaweed, and you said, yeah, but true, but. So, and again, this is where I say, when you're going to provide feedback, we'll take a little sidebar here for a second. If you're going to provide feedback, there are a couple of stipulations I would throw at you before you offer feedback. Feedback for an individual, not talking group dynamics, but for an individual. Feedback is done privately. It is never a corporate event. Never a corporate event. If I'm going to provide you feedback, and feedback to me is defined as corrective, disciplinary, and or feedback. Hey, that blue looks great on you, but your best color is pink. Right, for your skin tone, blah, blah, blah. So feedback is never just, oh, that was bad, and then you walk away. That's not feedback. That's criticism. Feedback is, man, blue looks good on you, but pink is your best color because, right? It really brings out the color of your eyes. Or, man, it really goes with your pink hair, you know? If Cody Cat was here, we could really go to town on that. You've got to be, this is why I'm not a fan of discipline, even the word discipline. Because discipline has a connotation of, let me tell you what's wrong and how you're going to fix it. Right? Feedback. 5 out of 7 would watch it again. I'm just going through chat here real quick before I go on too far. I don't want to miss some of your stuff because you guys are bringing up some good points. Confidence and competency can help you understand the feedback better. Yeah, agreed. So again, in the context of Rise Above in our students, we assume very low competence and very low confidence, right? And so we don't tend to add really in-depth feedback or corrective things until we've established the why, right? And a lot of times sometimes we assume low competence, and very quickly students demonstrate a very high level of competence on stuff. So I tend only to give feedback when it's asked for. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, Jamode. The hard part of that is when it's somebody who socially is not ranked or themselves has enough confidence to ask you for feedback, i.e. your kids. Right? Sometimes you got to offer feedback when it's not asked for. Or if you're a leader in an organization, take a nurse, for example. Right? If you walked into a hospital as a nurse and only gave feedback to your patients when it was asked for, you would struggle. Right? So that you may have just not defined your statement all the way, but I kind of get what you're saying. But I just want to explain for everybody the importance of feedback is a regular part of our everyday. It's something we continually do with the people. Your production manager always said praise in public, criticize in private. Yeah, and there's an element of that, but I will say this, that is a half truth. praise very often will go even further privately. So there are public times to give praise, but there are definitely, and I literally just talked about gratitude today. I literally just said this to my staff, that private notes to students, just little 2-second lines on their work saying, I read this last night after you left, I'm really proud of you, and just leave it on the desk where they can find it the next day. Right? Or as you're walking to and from classes and a student had a really exceptional, hour and a half before you went for lunch. As everyone's walking away, you kind of walk slowly with the student for a second. And you slow them down. And you say, hey, I just really want to say thank you. Thank you for really promoting, a good hour and a half productive class for me. That was really helpful as I was working with such and such a student or whatever the case may be. Right. So just be aware of that. So. Let's see what else we got here. You mean when you buy online? See what Marika. I know what you mean. I get, and I agree. We should always remember that there is a person on the other end of the feedback. Yeah, absolutely. But also consider the source. Yeah, the anonymity of the YouTube comment, right? And Marika, I mean, you're somebody who posts a lot of stuff social media wise online, and so I mean, you generally get very positive feedback on the stuff that you put out there. But the reality is, someday somebody could come on there and can be a complete butthead, right? And the reality is, there's a disconnect there between who that person is and how you should receive the comment. So, and I think that's what Seaweed is kind of saying there. You definitely didn't mean in my job or with my kids. Yeah. I figured as much, Jimon. Right, and the person giving it can affect the meaning of the feedback. Person giving it. Yeah. And so it's a two-way street, very much so, especially when it comes to feedback. Yeah, not enough teachers. And again, that has a lot to do. What's up, Albert? What's going on, man? Glad you're here. Very much so. And I would agree with you, Dingle, that not enough people in school settings in general provide enough feedback. And that's a lot of it has to do, in my understanding, with the schools around here anyways, has a lot to do with workload at this point. Yeah, delete all the negative things. So, and then from character, we move on to then contribution. So people need to know that, realize that the world is better because they're in it. That what I do means something and it has impact, right? So hang on a second. I think my lovely assistant wants to talk to me. Give me 2 seconds, guys. Yeah, Mom. And I'm back. Yeah, my wife just came in and asked the question about when I'm going to the gym, and realized I had a board meeting tonight for some other stuff that I do. So she was being nice and waiting for me to go to the gym. And I said, go on, get. Because I got a board meeting afterwards, so get your stuff done. Yeah, the next kind of step in the evolution of this conversation on resiliency. So competence. So just to reiterate, competence. First step, understanding of what's going on. How much do I know? Confidence, the ability to project what I know. Connection, who do I know that can assist me, or that I can then assist as need be. Your character, which is what we were just talking about, is how we get on the whole feedback thing. This idea of what are my morals and values, and do I stick to them, right? What I do in private, does it reflect what I do in public, and vice versa. So now we're talking about this idea of contribution. So before I get there, let's also update. You'll be happy to know that I joined the gym last week. Time to get risk strong. Giddy up. GG. Don't skip leg day. Don't forget. Where's it at? Leg day. Leg day. You're going to look like that when you're done. Contribution really is an important element. I know. A lot of people check out very often because they feel as though their contribution doesn't matter. Yeah, no one cares. You know, you don't care whether I show up or not. You know, why does attendance matter? You don't care. You get paid anyways, right? Those are real comments, FYI. You know, that idea that kids need to know that the world is a better place because they're in it, or you need to know, my stream viewers, you guys need to know that my stream is a better place because you're here, contributing, putting into, helping to connect and build my competence and confidence in the topics. This stream is better because you are here, reality. Thank you, by the way, all very much. And that your personal, listen now, that your personal contribution adds value and purpose and serves as a motivator for me. Right, I've had people come onto the stream and message me privately and saying, oh, thank you, I got so much out of the stream today, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, guys, you don't even begin to understand. I'm not afraid to say I am very selfish when it comes to the stream. This stream is a huge benefit to me. You know, if you guys only knew how stressful this work is, and I'm sure some of you get it. This is my venue to vent very often, my venue to exercise, to stretch, my social brain. You know, where I can come and I can think through things with you guys. My staff are great. I have a great wife, and but it's good to get in front of new people and to ask difficult questions sometimes. Now, for some of you, that scares the heck out of you, the thought of doing that sort of stuff. But for me, I can breathe. You know, you guys give me the ability to feel as though I have a contribution and that my presence matters. So, yeah, and having good people around me is very important. You know, and we talk about, all the streams talk about having the viewer base and blah, 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 and knowing you count on certain people to show up for you, to be a voice for you. And you all are that. I mean, you guys are phenomenal at doing that stuff. But understanding that showing up and contributing is how do I say it? It's a way of modeling generosity. Does that make sense to you? My brain's it's one of these things where self, I love you, hugs. It breeds a generosity in people, because when people see you contributing, we are innately driven to contribute ourselves. From the student aspect, I mean, Rise Above, we intentionally take the kids at least every other week on a volunteer excursion where they themselves get to give back to the community, to a community that gives so much to them. Right? We have a connection to a few nonprofits. We go to the Humane Society, you know, just because it's pets and they get to play with the kitty cats and do all that kind of stuff, right? But we also take them to a resale shop where they literally sort donations. And we donate our time to this organization so that they have things to sell, because they in turn then take the money that they get to, this is not a company so much as they then take those funds and they redistribute it back out to the community, to organizations that need help, which is an awesome concept to me. I think that's just a phenomenal thing. And so why wouldn't we want to give back to that, right? And so we do. We get the kids involved to get them understanding that their contribution has value. And if you go on our Facebook page, you can see them at these places volunteering and doing all that kind of stuff. So I encourage you to look up Rise Above JXN on Facebook, at Rise Above JXN. And just go through some of the pictures and see some of the silliness that goes on sometimes and some of the seriousness of the work, quote unquote work of Rise Above. Because there are days it feels like work, but other days you're just like, I cannot believe I get paid to do this. This is so awesome. Because there's a reality to contribution. And now I'm curious now to see what you feel about this. Because from contribution, you then move to something called coping. Coping generally has a negative connotation. It generally has this feeling of I'm scraping by. I'm just coping with life. I'm just coping with work. I'm just coping with this family. But it means more than that. Coping demonstrates a depth to you. How well you cope demonstrates how deep you are. Follow me for a second. The better you can cope, the more you can cope with stressful situations, demonstrates how much work you've done ahead of time. Demonstrates how much competence you have, demonstrates how much confidence you have, demonstrates how connected you are, how much character you've built, and how much you've contributed. The more you can cope, the more you've done beforehand. The more somebody can go through a really deep dive in a stressful situation. So I'll give you a perfect example. I've talked about it on stream recently, and I think it's a perfect example. And I hate to say that I'm repeating myself, but I think it's essential that I talk about this again because it's perfect. Driving to Indiana, accident on the highway, motorcycle gets clipped by a vehicle, guy flips out, skids on the highway, no helmet, cracked skull, literally, tore up, only had a jeans and a t-shirt on. I was the second car in line. There was a truck in front of me. Thankfully, I'm one of the first. Take it easy, Dingle. Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for the resub today, man. I get there relatively first. I have a high degree of competency and confidence in these situations. Why? I was a paramedic in the military. I'm used to seeing traumatic things. I've seen a lot of traumatic things, a lot of traumatic injuries, a lot of things that most people would freak out about. And as an example, as we started to assess this gentleman's injuries, and I took control of the scene and stabilized the guy and got him going to the point of waiting for ambulance and whatnot. There was a lady in the background screaming her head off, freaking out. Why was she freaking out? She had a very low degree of competence. And she had no confidence that this guy was going to make it and that any of us could do anything to help him. Here's the rub. If I didn't get rid of her, my ability to cope in that situation was diminishing by the second. Because she was stealing from my bucket. Remember I talked about the bucket? My bucket was relatively full in that situation. But with her in the background screaming her head off, she's literally pulling out of my bucket because I've got to now deal with her. So my ability to cope with the situation and to direct the traffic, as it were, diminished because of her contribution. So what I did was task her. I said, you got to stop. I need you to do something for me. And I gave her a ridiculous task that would take her far away. Right?
Okay.
Kiddo, don't do that.
Everything's great.
Thank you.
Everything is awesome.
But this means you got to work out now, Marika. You just committed to the gym routine, sucker. Get wrecked. Marika, 15, is my daughter, for those of you who haven't caught on yet. She's the oldest of the 3 kids that I've got. And so in that situation, all of my ability to deal with that situation depended on my ability to cope with looking at the trauma that was in front of me, conceptually understanding the events that just took place, and understanding that, yes, the traffic behind us had all stopped. That was all doing 80 miles an hour. Being able to divide up and to develop a plan, and then to effectively direct people in a positive fashion that was going to help everybody cope, especially the guy on the ground. And what was amazing to me is when it was all done, the ambulance got there, the police got there, and they took this poor guy away, and he fully recovered, thankfully, was several people came to me as we were kind of collecting ourselves and everybody was leaving, getting back in their vehicles, and traffic was being allowed to go again. Several people approached me and said, "Thank God you were here, because we don't know what we would have done if you weren't." In other words, they weren't confident that their contribution would have mattered had I not been there, with a high degree of competency and confidence in that situation. Does all that make sense? Because all that then leads back to where you're going to use your high degree of confidence and competence in a given situation. And that given situation might be work. It might be your home with your kids. And I've talked about this on stream before. Jamod, you were there when I talked about this idea of giving your kids your testimony, telling them, what's going on. And I'll be honest with you, and Marika, you tell me, I believe my kids are more resilient today because of the events that they have gone through with us as a family the past 10 years. Moving from Canada, giving up very successful jobs, having just built a home and, in private schools and the whole 9 yards, to saying we're giving it all up. We're selling everything and we're going to start essentially over again in a foreign country. I think that our kids are, on a resiliency level, going to be better off than somebody who has not gone through that and seen, holy crap, you can do that and still survive. That there are a lot of good people out there that can kind of help you get through. Whew. Yeah, and I would qualify that, Jamod, in saying sometimes the things you do are not within your control. The things that you do, the more that you do, I would say the more experiences that you have very often. And I would say that I would go one step further with the qualification that say the more experiences that you have that you successfully walk through, keyword successfully walk through, the more ability you have to do other things successfully, right? And I used to tell, as an employer, my employees, learn from failures. Yeah, absolutely. That in order to think outside the box, you always tell your employees, you got to think outside the box. You got to be creative. You got to do all these things. Well, yeah, it's hard to do when you're in the box all the time. In order to think outside the box, sometimes you got to get outside the box. It's a scary proposition to do your brakes for the first time on your car, having only watched a YouTube video. If no one who has the ability to change brakes has ever sat beside you while you do it for the first time and walks you through it, again, that's that connection piece. If you've never had somebody sit with you and actually do it with you, I guarantee you're not feeling really confident in that moment. Right? But how do you get outside the box? I don't know. I throw it back to you. How do you get outside the box? I'll tell you some of the things that I did and some of the things I told my employees, but do we have an allegory for the cave here? Let's not. It's PG stream. Yeah, I mean, you have to have a learning mindset. You have to have, especially as an adult, you can't think that because I'm done high school, college, university, trade school, whatever it is, that you're done learning, right? As Jamode said, and as you just said, Seaweed, that you got to be accepting of feedback and that knowing that there is somebody out there smarter, wiser, and more experienced than you. It is a philosophical ideal, and I don't pretend for a minute that this isn't all a philosophical ideal, that this isn't just something that is a best case scenario. I know that all of this is a best case scenario and that all the best laid plans tend to go to waste. So let's look it up. Shall we, Elle? Somebody beat me to it. Come on, somebody do it. Allegory of the Cave. Plato's Cave was presented by the Greek philosopher Plato in his work Republic, circa 514 to 520. Oh, that jackhammer is going to kill me. It is written in a dialogue, as a dialogue between Plato's brother and his mentor. Does anybody want to go further? What's up, Anus? What's going on, buddy? How are you doing, Fawcett? I'm not aware of this one. I've read a lot of philosophy. I can't believe I've not read this. Actually, have I read The Cave? Oh, yes, I have read about The Cave. Yes, I recognize. I do. Serious conversation. What's up? So let's read, shall we? Plato has Socrates describe a group of people who have lived chained to the wall of a cave all of their lives, facing a blank wall. The people watch shadows projected on the wall from objects passing in front of a fire behind them, and they give the shadows names. The shadows are the prisoner's reality. All right, take it easy, Seaweed. Love that you're here, buddy. I love that you love what you see and hear. Socrates explains how the philosopher is like a prisoner who is freed from the cave and comes to understand that the shadows in the wall are not reality at all, for he can perceive the true form of reality rather than the manufactured reality of the shadows. So if you project a shadow of an elephant on the wall and you never actually conceptually understand what an elephant is, and you give it a name of a seagull, until you get out and actually see an elephant, and somebody says to you, that's an elephant. That's not a seagull. Because if you see an elephant the first time, you see the silhouette of it, you're going to say, oh, that's a seagull. And someone's going to say, what? No. The reality of that is, that's your reality, but the reality of that is that's an elephant. And they don't reside in caves. They reside on the African plains or in Asia somewhere. And the reality is, in that moment, as Ellie, and see, this is all flooding back to me. You brought me right back to university, Ellie, and you're killing me. That was a lot of work. Is that they perceive certain things through all of their senses as opposed to just one. And so that's the idea of philosophy, is that you then dive deeper and you engage all of your senses and not just the peripheral ones that tend to get used the most. And so suddenly... So the reality here is that we cannot free the prisoner from the idea that seeing a shadow and understanding it as an elephant. You can't tell them, no, that's an elephant, because all they've ever known is that shadow on the wall and that's an elephant. Is that this is something that they themselves have to conceptualize and realize. It's our job to take them on the journey to that realization. Right. So, and Ellie, I think that's what you're getting at here, is that part of the journey of what we're doing with this topic today is getting somebody to the point where they're realizing for themselves that their negative behavior, that their lack of contribution, that whatever it is not effective. You can tell them all they want. They have to come to that realization themselves. Understanding that their risky behaviors are, whatever, elevating stresses or, elevating the likelihood that their own kids are going to be at risk of those same behaviors. So, and guys, I apologize for the jackhammer in the background. The reality of this week, I'm hoping all of that will be done this week, but the place is going to look amazing afterwards. I can't wait. I'll do a tour and whatnot on the stream later on to show you what you guys have contributed towards through your subs and whatnot here at Rise. Because you need to understand that when you give, whether through donation, whether you go on our Amazon page and buy stuff for the kids, for the program or whatever the case is, know that that is not a contribution to me, it's a contribution to our program. So I just want to say thank you again for doing that and supporting the program as a whole. Oh, good, it's not too bad. And back to the box. So the reality is when I say to you, I want you to think outside the box, what I would say to my staff is, because we were in management, Ellie, what I would say to them is, go and interview with the intent of taking a job. You may not actually take the job, but go and interview with another company. At least once a year, go and interview. Just to get other people's perspectives on job requirements. What are they expecting from their employees? What do they see as an important element to a successful company? How do you see outside of a box? You got to physically go outside the box. Go shop. How do they stock their shelves? How do those employees manage their brake systems, right? You might find that your system isn't as broken as you thought. Suddenly you say, oh my gosh, yes, ours actually kicks butt. Because I look at theirs and I go, I would never do it like that. Like, that's just horrible. And for me, and this is why I was given so much freedom and control at the companies I worked for, is I was great at this. I mean, I was asked to bring new technology into several companies that I worked for. And I would get quotes from I would have like as many different businesses as I could get come in and demonstrate. All right, kid, I love you. Go feed the hubby. Tell Craig I said hi. Thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate you, kiddo. If you haven't checked out Marika's Instagram page, Marika, if you're still here, post your Instagram page. I don't know if anyone was here I think it was Cody Cat's stream, where we actually watched some of her videos and stuff like that. And thank you, Shimode, for posting. If she doesn't, I'll go and I'll find it before the end of the stream and put it in there. But she's a makeup artist. She works for a company in MAC Cosmetics, and she herself is very creative with all the stuff that she does and whatnot. She's just a phenomenally very gifted kid. When I say kid, she's in her 20s when it comes to that stuff. So, but yeah, and then the last thing kind of on the list of C's here as we move along. Oh, there it is, at Boss Makeup. Thank you, Marika, for putting that in there. See if we can't get you a couple more followers. Bye, kiddo. The last one is control. When you go through each of these steps and when you understand all of these things, you're very likely to then come to a place where you have a depth of understanding of your own ability to control outcomes. That you have the ability to make decisions. And this is the one thing that we do here at Rise Above the most, is we help kids to understand that you're in control of your destiny. Well, yeah, I'm only here because they kicked me out. Well, no, you're here because you made a decision to do something that was either in an attempt to circumvent a rule or that blatantly broke some rule that they had in place or some decision that somebody else in leadership had made. And it isn't until we start having some of these conversations that they realize that, wait a second, I was in control. Because we then move into a situation where we start talking to people, and this is the part I want you to hear now. If you have not gone through these steps with yourself, if you don't see yourself as being in control, that means you have, as an adult, and I assume you're all of age, although you may not act it sometimes, myself included, it means that you have willingly or indirectly given your control away. Hear me now. If you don't assume control, you have either intentionally or unintentionally given somebody else control of everything. In some cases, that might be a good thing. Some of you, I may not want to give you control over changing the brakes on my car. And I may want to give that control to somebody else. Especially if I'm not good at it. I don't want to be in control of that. I want to give control of that to somebody else. But when it comes to teaching my sons and daughters morals and things of that nature, I don't know that I would just willy-nilly give that control away. When it comes to my organization, Rise Above, I say my organization. It's a public organization. It's a nonprofit. But, this is my baby. I'm not going to lie. This is something that I have my heart and sweat into. And I'm just not going to give control of this willy-nilly away to anybody. And so many of you have met Nick on stream, and that's somebody that I vetted quite extensively before I put in a position of authority in this organization to be in a place where he can accept control should something happen to me. There's a reality to that. We really, as a group, need to be careful who we give away our control to. And this is a conversation I have with our students all the time about, your decision-making gave away your authority. Because really, up until that moment, you had full control of your life. You decided when you got up. You decided what school you went to. You decided whether or not you had to spend weekends in jail, whether or not you had to report every week and do drug tests for a probation officer. You decided whether that was going to happen or not. Or you put yourself in a situation where somebody else was going to decide that for you. And I should not give that control to you. I hope you're talking about the brakes. Because the reality is most of us are trustworthy people. Most of us have each other's best interests at heart when we want to make decisions for each other. When you permitted my daughter to post something, Jamode, you did that. You gave her control of the chat for a second, trusting that she was going to do the right thing, that she wasn't going to post something nefarious in our chat. Right? This idea of disciplining, taking control away, although we know it's a thing where we're not necessarily punishing or trying to control people. It's meant to be a teaching thing. Depending on your maturity and how much competence, confidence, connection, character, and contribution and coping mechanisms you have in place, you're going to misunderstand this control thing. You're going to misconstrue when you have given away your control. And I'll go back to my work experience for a second. Everywhere I have worked, for the most part, I have been given the keys to the building, like literally key to every door, the security codes. And I had this like really weird trust level with my managers. And the reason is because they felt as though I had all of these C boxes checked. You know, I had a high level of confidence, competency, blah, 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 all this stuff. I got along with all the departments well and blah, blah, blah. And so they trusted me enough to say, here's the keys. I'm leaving you in charge of this 1 million square foot facility to do what we know needs to get done to get all of this product out the door with these 500 employees. That's a scary thing. That's a daunting concept for some people. And that's a control that can be taken away like that. I can give that authority away quickly. If one little moral slip, right? One little overconfidence. We didn't get there, but we should have talked about overconfidence and underconfidence. But just being too sure of myself in a situation where I know I don't have the competency level to do it. And I'll be honest with you, I did that several times. Why? Because I just wanted to be better. I needed to learn something and there wasn't somebody available, so I was willing to teach myself. And so I had to be overconfident in a situation, say, yep, I can do that. I've never done it before, but I'll do it. No, I'll show you. I can do it. Right? And that's because I had I have good common sense. So I know I'm not going to totally destroy it. I might break parts of it, but I'm not going to totally destroy it. For sure, that's why I try to give my kids as much control and choice as possible. Natural consequences mean a lot more than, yeah. And I just talked about this today. So there's two ways of doing this. You can say to a class or a group of kids or your own kids or even adults, okay, what do you want to do today? What do you want the topic to be? And the hands shoot up in the air. Oh, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do this. And for example, this is a real example now. Okay, what do we want to talk about? What's the topic for life skills today? Hands shoot up. One kid says, oh, why don't we talk about how to build our own meth labs? True statement. It actually was said in our life skills. Why? Because we left the door wide open. What do we want to do for life skills? Oh, let's learn how to operate a meth lab. Instead, and again, that's not bad. Again, you're giving them option. The reality is, knowing your audience, the competency level, the confidence level, all this stuff, work smarter, not harder. The reality is what we should say is, okay, guys, here's a list of 10 things that we can do today. Which one of these do we want to do? What that does, Shimode, as you were getting at, is it says to them, you have control. Exercise your control. But us knowing that there is a competence level in a character issue, maybe somewhere in the room, that we have to work within a certain parameter level, that we have to set it up for success. We have to make it so it's a win-win situation, right? You see what I'm saying? And sometimes that's not just in a situation like here at Rise Above. That can be in your household, that can be at work, where yes, you have to give them a certain element of control, but within measure. Just because your kid can drive as a little electric Jeep around your yard doesn't mean you let him drive the station wagon to school. So it's controlled measure. And I've told my story on stream where at 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm glad Marika's not here anymore. I took my dad's tractor out of the garage and drove in the middle of nowhere and got arrested. Long story. I'll tell it again someday. Ellie, it's a great story too. And I give my dad all the credit in the world. A tractor. Yeah, like a John Deere tractor. Yeah. Because my dad was now I got to tell the story. This is usually how I tell the story. I tell the story. I don't say it's a tractor normally up front. See, now you've ruined it all. So I've got to, the punchline. Usually I set it up that because my dad was a big drag racing guy. He was always into muscle cars and all this stuff. And, I was a kid. I didn't grow up with my dad, but when I finally moved in with him later in my early teen years, I guess, I finally got access to all the toys, He had all the trophies, and he was always into drag racing and stuff. And so one day he always had the big wheels in the back and the little wheels in the front, and tons of horsepower. And it just they you could rev them and do all kinds of fancy stuff. And so one day it was like 3 a.m. My dad was asleep. I was kind of home, just my dad and I. And so I snuck out and I went back to the garage and I didn't want to start it because it was loud, And so I put it in neutral and I pushed it all by myself out of the garage, out to the end of the driveway because he had a big long driveway, and his bedroom was at the back of the house. So I was confident that I could push it out to the end of the driveway, and then when I got it there, I could start it without the exhaust rumble waking my dad up, right? And so that's what I did. I got the and it was this green one. It had the big wheels in the back and it had a yellow racing stripe on it, right? And so I push it out to the end of the road and I start this thing up and I'm like all excited as a kid. And so I drive this thing down the street and I get it down to the little side road and I figured I'd open it up, and so I get to the side of the road and I rev this thing up to full power and I'm whipping down the side road and suddenly I see these lights behind me. I'm thinking, oh crap, okay, I'll slow down a little bit and I'll let this car pass by. Well, what I noticed was the car was catching up, but it wasn't flying past me as fast as I had hoped. As a matter of fact, what I realized is it was just pulling up behind me. And so I kept saying to myself, just look forward. Don't look back. And so as the cop turned his lights on, I shut it down, and the guy come up to me and he says to me, is this yours? And I'm like, technically yes. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, it's my dad's. Oh, really? He says, you from around here? And because you're driving down the side road in something that you don't have the ownership papers on you. It has no license plate on it. And so he says, where do you live? And I said, oh, I'm like a mile away. And he says, okay. He says, well, this is what we're going to do. You're going to turn around. You're going to drive home, and I'm going to follow you right to your house. And now my heart is just sinking. I'm thinking, oh, my God, my dad is going to kill me when I pull in the driveway with this thing, and he's just going to, kill me, right? So sure enough, this cop follows me all the way home with his lights on, all the way into the driveway. And my dad sees the lights, obviously. The cop walks me up to the door, knocks on the door. My dad answers. The cop has me kind of by the scruff of the neck. And the cop says to my dad, does this belong to you? Pointing to me. And my dad says, yeah, that's mine. And the cop kind of moves out of the way so he can see the driveway, to where his cop car is shining on the thing in the driveway. And he says, that John Deere tractor, is that yours? And my dad says, yeah, that's mine. Where'd you find that? And the cop says, yeah, around the corner. He was driving down the side. He's driving your tractor down the side road about a mile away. To which my dad says, oh, really? Cop says, you want either of these things back? My dad says, yeah, I'll take them both. He says, yeah, that's my boy, which is my dad's line to this day. Yeah, that's my boy. And so he comes inside, and my dad just gives me the dad look, the look of, really? You stole the tractor? And I was just like, mm-hmm. And I went to my room, and that was the end of the story. And to this day, it's the funniest story my dad can tell. Anywhere we go, the day I stole the tractor. And it wasn't like I stole the 396 Chevelle, the race car out of the back. It wasn't like I hopped in the Jeep and went for a joyride through the fields. It was a freaking John Deere tractor that I took for a joyride. And what was my plan? I was just going to drive around the block. No, it's 3 a.m. We live on the country, on a little hobby farm. I took the tractor. I was going to just go around the block. It wasn't even a block. It would have been a 3-hour tour. The blocks are so big because you go around these big fields, right? But the joke is, I'm not supposed to tell you it's a tractor. I'm supposed to just tell you it's just big race tires in the back and little tire in the front it's green with the race stripe, and everyone pictures this big muscle car. And then I tell you, yeah, is that your John Deere tractor? I've done sermons around this, and I mean everyone just cracks up laughing when I at the end I show a picture of the John Deere tractor. But understand this. So the moral of the story is this. My dad could have overreacted in that situation. He could have beat the snot out of me, honestly. Because this is a few years ago. Moral of the story, don't steal tractors. Risk on tractor emote. She thinks my tractor's sexy. The reality is my dad could have over-responded. And I could have become fearful of my dad. But I can tell you, I learned a huge lesson that night. I knew my dad was disappointed in me. I could tell by his face. He knew I knew that I didn't do right. And when you get into a situation where you've got kids or you're in control of kids, know that you are in control of the situation and how the outcome is going to affect that kid. You can over-respond because you have control. Just know that your over-response is going to have consequences in any situation. Yeah, I don't really even know. The reality is my dad was thinking, that's my boy, Ellie. And he literally meant it that way. You are the loin of my loin, is what he was saying. You are doing exactly what I did. Right? Because my dad would have been at that point, late 30s, early 40s. Not much younger than I am now. It's not like he's 60 years old at that point, right? He looked at me at that moment and said, you son of a gun, you just did what I did. And I'll tell you, it is hard. It is near impossible for you, rightfully so, to get mad at your kids for doing the things that you do yourself. It doesn't mean it's right, but you can't over-respond in those situations. All you can do in those situations is to rationalize with your kid why doing that is not good. Yes, I'm an idiot, but you don't need to be an idiot too. And Albert, I've talked about that on stream before, this idea of our response to things, and I should probably revisit that topic again, because it's a great thing, whether it's in marriage, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your work, or just in public. You got to be careful not to over-respond to stuff and to do things that jeopardize, because really over-response is a jeopardization of your relationship. You create a very shallow relationship when you over-respond. Because what happens is the more you respond, the less likely they are to listen to you in the future. You have to respond, but you don't need to over-respond. Because the minute you over-respond, people shut down. Nope. Close my ears, shut my eyes, put my head down. I'm pretty sure, Ellie, my dad asked me, what were you thinking? But the fact that my dad laughs his butt off today about it and shares it with everybody tells me what he was thinking that night. That's exactly what I would have done too. I get it. But yeah, if you hadn't stolen it that night, I was thinking earlier I was going to go for a joyride in the tractor tonight too, but you beat me to it, you know? because that's totally my dad's personality. He's totally that guy. He's a butthead sometimes. I'm not going to lie. My dad was not the greatest father in the world, but I mean, I absolutely love him to death today. So, yeah, there's just a reality that I think that the reality of my stream is that as we conceptualize the effects of relationships on us as well as on our relationships on other people, that if it leaves you with nothing else but okay, that's a different way of looking at it. Oh, that's why that thing happened, or hey, that's why my kids talk to me that way. I hope that's the way my stream reaches you, and I hope that's what you guys get out of it. And like I said earlier, I pray that you guys understand what I get out of these conversations. It's edifying. It's edifying to me. It teaches me. Although I come across as having a certain level of knowledge and expertise, the reality is I don't. My depth of understanding and expertise, I'm every day's okay. Let's see what we can figure out today. Let's see what we can learn today. What book are we reading now? Less likely to listen to the future and the chance of them distance themselves from you. And yeah, and that's, especially as a parent, that's critical, that you don't create distance between you and your kids. I see this with my wife, with our kids. She tends to overreact, and the kids listen to her less and less. Yeah, and that can be in many things. I mean, you'll see it a lot in your kids early on, particularly when it's a mom to boys or boys a husband to a daughter. Yeah, you've really got to, as the opposite sex parent, you've really got to model a healthy relationship for your kids, because otherwise, when they get into a scenario where they're getting married and having kids of their own, you're going to set them up for failure, because they're not going to know what a healthy relationship looks like, what the dynamic verbally should look like. The discourse of the day. Right? I feel bad because my brother, sometimes I've overreacted. And that's usually what I do. Ellie, I tend to, I get accused of underreacting sometimes, because I don't typically react overtly publicly. I'm very much a candidate, someone who seeks out private reactions, where I pull my boy aside and I say, look, dude, that is not going to happen again. You know what happened? And they affirm, I walk them through the good, the bad. Hey, I did that once too, and this is why it's not good. This is how it sucks later on. Right? And I do the same thing. In the moment, I'll tend to make a joke out of it. Oh, dear God, please tell me she's not pregnant. And my kids are like, and they start laughing, and whatever the case is, or, my son comes home, I screwed up at West School today. And the first thing I say is, oh, God, don't tell me she's pregnant. Or something silly like that. I don't always say that. But life's too short to be serious all the time. I think you've got to inject some humor in it, so that you don't completely shut the situation down, because they're already scared to death of whatever happened, right? They already know. Most kids, unless there's something socially or functionally wrong, most kids are going to know that what I just did was not okay, was not appropriate for the situation or for my family, for whatever, right? So you don't need to tell them that it was wrong. You just need to go through the consequences in what will change in the future with them. So, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like you tell them what they did wrong, but then you see it's serious. Yeah. Yeah, and that comes with maturity too, right? So the less mature, and that gets back to that whole competency thing. So I'm going to be Pastor Neil for a second. You've all heard of the 10 Commandments, yeah? Goes without saying. Most of us in North America have heard about the 10 Commandments. I would hazard a guess that 99% of you have never read the Bible or even read just that section of the Bible that talks about the 10 Commandments. Yet if I was to name the 10 Commandments off to you, you'd be like, yep, 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 yep. Know that one, know that one, know that one. Most of the ones that most people don't know are thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's the one most people go, what? Oh, I've never, not that one, right? Because that's the one really religious one in there, faith-based. The reality is the 10 Commandments are both based off of moral integrity. Things that 99% of us already have built into us. I don't need to tell you that stealing is wrong. You know. Yet there's a commandment that says thou shalt not steal. I don't need to tell you that you should honor your mother and father. Yet we have a commandment that says honor your mother and father. I don't need to tell you not to murder people. Yet we have a command that says thou shalt not murder. I will delineate there's a difference between murdering and killing. Different stream, another day. I wrote a huge 80-page paper on the topic. You don't need to tell them that they did wrong. That's my point. It's built into us. Little babies know when they're stealing. There's whole studies on it. They know, little babies know how to manipulate situations to get what they want from you. That's what temper tantrums are. That's their way of controlling or trying to take away your ability to control the situation. I'm going to throw this fit in the middle of the store so that you give me the lollipop. And it can be learned. So again, but morally they know right from wrong is my point. But you can teach the kids by responding to their temper tantrum in the store that if I just do throw this fit in the middle of the store, mom's going to give me a lollipop. My encouragement to you is suffer through the first temper tantrum in the store and stick to your guns. You ain't getting the damn lollipop. And you'll never have another temper tantrum in the store again. Why? Because they learned I'm not going to get what I want just because I throw a fit on the floor. Right? We learn behaviors. It's a known thing. Anyways, read a book. The reality is, morally, we all have those things innately in us. So to Ellie's point, you don't need to belabor beat you over the head with, this is what you did wrong, this is what you did wrong, this is what you did wrong. The question we need to start with is, what happened? I challenge you to start with that question. What happened just now? Are you okay? How did we get here? Let them narrate the story. The moment you tell them what happened, you've lost them. Because invariably, somewhere in there, you're going to miss a single little detail that makes it all irrelevant to them at that point. Because you don't know. You're just guessing. You weren't there. You're going to sit here and tell me. You didn't even tell me that one point that was the most important point. When little Johnny stole my whatever, or when Johnny pulled my pigtails. You didn't even see that part. That's why I threw the rock at him. You just saw me throw a rock at him. So this is our last point of control. Is by asking these questions, you give them the semblance of control, that they are in control of the narrative, that they get to tell you what happened. But the important part is to get everybody's point of view, right? Get the whole narrative. Okay, I'm glad you told me what happened. Thank you for telling me that little Johnny pulled your pigtail. I'm going to go talk to Johnny about the pigtail thing. So is there anything else you want to tell me before I get on to talk to him? Well, there was this thing before he pulled my pigtail. I did call him a stupid head. Right? Oh, okay. I'm glad you told me that part too, because I would have forgotten that if I was you too, but I'm glad you remembered it before I went and talked to Johnny. Right? Give them the chance. Now, if they don't say that, that's a different thing. So then I go talk to Johnny, and Johnny says, yeah, we were sitting there playing with the dump trucks in the sandbox, and then she called me a stupid fathead, and blah, blah, blah. So I pulled her pigtails. Well, okay, so, how do you feel about the fact that you pulled? Well, I probably shouldn't have pulled her pigtails. I probably should have told you that she called me a big, fat, stupid head, But she shouldn't have thrown the rock at me. Well, yeah, you're right. Okay, but now we have some more facts. So now it's important to go back to Susie and say, okay, Susie, why'd you call him big fat stupid head? Well, I just felt bad because I wanted to play with the truck. Oh, okay, so now we're at the real reason why we're having this whole discussion in the first place, right? That's what you think. You don't say that to them, right? Okay, well, why did you want the truck? Well, was there another truck that you could have, played with? Or what is it about that truck? And this is what I usually do. Well, what is it about the truck that you like so much? And I kind of deflect a little bit to kind of ease the tension in the room. I'll give you a good example. I had a young lady in my office, a 17-year-old in my office the other day who's just distressed. And it's a learned behavior, to get back to a point somebody made earlier. And having a really rough moment. And she just in there wanting to vent. And she happened to be had a tub of grapes and strawberries. And these grapes were massive. Who cares? But as she's talking, out of the blue, I'm like, holy crap, those are huge grapes. It was completely out of the blue. And she looks at the grapes and she kind of giggles a little bit because, yeah, they're such and such a store, whatever the case is. I'm like, holy crap, I got to go get me some of those grapes. Those look amazing. And so I deflected from this ploy for sympathy that she was in the room for to interjecting a bit of humor, interjecting a different topic, and kind of distracting her away from that I need you to pat me on the back and tell me I'm loved type situation, which is what it was. To me telling her in a very indirect way, I see you. Without feeding into this, oh, I'm going to pretend to be all sad so you notice me, because that's the way I get people to notice me, is I just pretend to walk around all sad. So I changed I shifted the subject while still giving her the attention she sought. Does that make sense? So doing the same thing with the truck and saying, okay, Susie, I understand you want a truck too, but why do you want that particular truck? What is it about that truck that you like so much? And then bringing Johnny back into the conversation to say, Johnny, you know why Susie wanted that truck so much? She really likes the fact that it has the racing stripe on the side, right? So, could you think it'd be cool to next time you go to the sandbox with her, to give her that truck first and to see how excited she gets? And really, I'm dumbing it down to like a little elementary school level, but the reality is we do things very similar to that with, high school age students, but obviously not with sandboxes, not with pickup trucks. But the reality is you can do this at work, you can do this with your own kids, and honestly, you can do this in your marriage too. But again, if all you focus on is the rock throwing, the pigtail pulling, and the name calling, you're only ever going to see the rock throwing, the pigtail pulling, and the name calling. You're never going to be able to shift gears and get to a different place. And that's the control thing, right? All you're doing is processing emotions. You got to get away from processing the responses, the physical responses. I'm done. I'm spent. That makes sense, guys. Did that have any merit? If anyone's left, did anyone bail on me? This is a huge element of our everyday here, and it's not something most people can articulate. A lot of people understand this. A lot of people understand the importance of understanding, of knowing, having a degree of understanding of a given subject, or being confident, having an air of confidence about yourself and blah, blah, blah. A lot of people can spew little isms, about things, but articulating it in one concise 2-hour bleh is something entirely different. So I'm hoping, if nothing else, this is something that you can go back to and go, oh, okay, he said that thing that one time that really made sense to me, and or Ellie or Shemode or Marika or somebody in stream said something intelligible because Risk wasn't making any sense. That really helped me out. I think that that's always my hope, is that this brings about a new level of competence and confidence for you guys, so that you can move forward into a new place of control over your lives and control over. Control with, not over, control with the people that you do life with. So, all right. Thank you all. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate the fact that you came and hang out with me. Shemode, welcome back. It was good to see you here. Good to have your input again today. Ellie, you're a rock star for hanging out with us today. Who else here? Nappy was here, or not Nappy. Dingo was here. We missed Nappy today. Again, if you haven't already, be praying for Nappy and his family. His mom has not been doing well, so she's in and out of healthcare, and I just whatever's going on there, I pray that Nappy's in a good place. He's been quiet lately, so send him a note. Let him know you miss him. It's Albert. Thanks for popping in. Who else we have here today? It's Albert. MLA was here today. Fawcett was heading for a little bit. Dingle, Marika. Yeah, all the peeps were here today. Appreciate you guys. I hope it was worth it for you guys to hang out, spend your 2 hours with me, and to be a part of what we're talking about. And next week, I think we're going to talk. We're going to talk about gratitude next week. It's a topic we've broached before. It might be new for some of you. It might be old hat for some of you, but I think it's a good subject nonetheless. It's going to be a shorter topic, I think, next week, but I'm hoping to have a guest in-house with us next week so that we can kind of get a different perspective as opposed to just mine, because just mine sometimes just sucks. So thanks for hanging out. Hope you all have a great week, and I'm sure I'll see most of you throughout the week in different streams and whatnot, and I appreciate the fact that you guys all continue to support what we do here and continue to support Rise Above. If you haven't, and if you have $5 to spare, I encourage you to go to our Amazon page, our Amazon wish list, and we add stuff there regularly. We sent out a bunch of curriculum that we really want to get for the kiddos to use here that we think will be effective. And if you have the time, the means, or the desire to do so, I'd love for you to participate in that way. And I know several people on the stream have literally on a weekly basis so far. So thank you all for continuing to do so. Thank you for subbing. Thank you for continuing to be a part of the community that I know and love. So thanks, guys. Hope you all have a great week. And, enjoy yourselves. Behave. And remember, be better. Be better all the time, every day. Bye.